2025, the Committee on Education Policy. A quorum is present and the committee will come to order. I promised my co-chair, Senator Swedzinski, that we would take a couple of minutes of committee time in the beginning today, since we have kind of hit the ground running, that we will actually do introductions. And his brilliant question, he wanted everyone to quickly answer, so name, where you represent, and then one book that you think all high schoolers must absolutely read before graduation. So since we're still waiting on this end of the table to fill up, Senator Hochschild, I apologize to put you on the spot, but we'll start with you and work our way down.
All right, thank you so much, Madam Chair. Grant Hochschild, State Senator for the largest, most rural, and most importantly, most beautiful district in the state. I represent the North Shore, the Boundary Waters Canoe area, Superior National Forest, 2 tribal nations, and 65% of the Canadian border in Minnesota. I think that every high school student should read A Gentleman in Moscow, a book about an aristocrat in Russia who during the Bolshevik Revolution is put on house arrest in a hotel, and he gets to watch the revolution from his house arrest in this hotel. And it's just fascinating to see all the characters and people that he interacts from around the world as Russia goes through that transformation. So highly recommend. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Nate Wiesenberg. I represent Senate District 10 in central Minnesota. I live in Little Falls, and that's kind of the center part of the district. It's between St. Cloud and Brainerd. I don't know what kind of book I would tell high school kids to read. Anything pertaining to science and biology, I guess.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Senator Liz Bolden. I represent District 25, which is most of Rochester and some areas north of Rochester. There's many good answers to this question about a book. The one I think I would recommend would be Night by Elie Wiesel, which is related to the Holocaust. Excellent book. Difficult to read, but excellent.
Madam Chair and members, my name is Bjorn Arneson. I'm a nonpartisan analyst for this committee. My book recommendation isn't a specific book necessarily, but I think high school students should have a basic understanding about some of the key elements, personal finance, and how the time value of money works as they think about taking out student loans or working in some capacity.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Jenna Hofer. I am the nonpartisan fiscal analyst assigned to this committee. Like Mr. Arneson, I don't think that I could pick just one book that every high schooler should read, but instead I would say that they should find a book that would inspire a joy and a love of reading so that they continue it once they are out of school.
Madam Chair, members, I am Anne-Marie Lewis, the nonpartisan counsel for the committee. And I actually do have a book, my suggestion would be Atomic Habits, learning good habits and getting rid of your bad habits.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Steve Swedzinski, Senator Eden Prairie, Minnetonka, Hopkins School Districts. It's fitting that we shared this co-chair opportunity because we share my western border is Senator Coleman's eastern border. In the book, I said on Monday, it was Holocaust Remembrance Day on Monday, and it's Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and I actually had my students read that book for enrichment, and it's just a wonderful, helps kids try to figure out why they're here and what their goal is in life, and it's just a great book for high school kids.
Ed Cook, I'm on staff with the Senate Republican Caucus, and I'm going to go with the Federalist Papers.
Oh, that's fantastic. Hello again, Senator Julia Coleman. I represent the eastern portion of Carver County, and one of the books I think all high schoolers should read is Profiles in Courage by John F. Kennedy. I think it's really good about doing necessarily the right thing, even if it's not the popular thing to do, and I think it's just a must read.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Christina Schaefer. I'm Senator Coleman's LA, and I would say a good book would be The Giving Tree. It's more for little kids, but I think everyone needs to give a little bit more.
Well, hi, I'm Senator Erin May Quaid. I represent Senate District 56, which is Rosemont, Apple Valley, Egan, which is also the school district I represent and graduated from. I love to read, so it's hard for me to pick a book, but I read the biography of Anna Arnold Hedgeman, who was a Minnesota woman. She was the only woman to be part of the organizing committee for the March on Washington, who had a very specific criticism for Dr. King, which was she always thought his speech would be better if he had said, "We have a dream," instead of "I have a dream." And she also talked about how frustrating it was to have spent her whole life fighting to be seen as a whole person, as a Black woman, and she said how much she could have done in her life if she hadn't had to fight to be seen as human, which I always found to be really inspiring. So I think it would be a great book for especially Minnesota high schoolers to read, because she was from St. Paul and she graduated from University in Minnesota.
Well, thanks. Jim Abler from Anoka, which, you know, it's the largest district in the state. Anyway, so there's only one book I think that I could point out as being my favorite, Senator Swedzinski, Minnesota, A History of the State by Theodore C. Blagan. I'm sucking up to the teacher. That's actually not my favorite, but but I'm trying to participate here. And do I get points for that? Anyway, so anything John Grisham writes, and I read the Bible a lot. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm State Senator Mary Kunish, and as a former library media specialist, this is an especially hard choice to make because, as everyone says, there are so many, and I've fortunately been able to buy a lot of those for my students. But I would suggest that every student should read the book Indigenous Peoples' History of the U.S. by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz. It's a contemporary, authentic piece of literature that really explains again, the authentic history of our Indigenous people here in the United States. And it came out as an adult book, and then they created another one that is Indigenous People History of the U.S. for young people. So they made it, they adjusted it for young readers as well. And I think it's important that we really begin to make that a part of our educational experience.
Good afternoon. Zach Duckworth, Senate District 57, which is Lakeville, Elko, Newmarket, Credit River, and Eureka Township. The books I'm currently reading range anywhere from Goosebumps to Boxcar Children to the best-selling Everybody Poops. But in reality, to high schoolers especially, I would recommend reading a little bit less social media. And this might be wishful thinking, but a good book that high schoolers and I think Minnesota legislators and governors should read is the book Team of Rivals.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Elise Mann from Senate District 50, which is Bloomington and Edina. One book that stuck with me when I was a young reader, which made me feel like even though I was young, I was powerful and self-sufficient, was the book Hatchet, which I recommend.
Well, thank you all very much for your comments. As punishment for Senator Miller and Eichhorn's tardiness, we'll randomly pop that question on them in the middle of the hearing and see if they can think on their toes there. Part of today's hearing is part of our listening tour. I've been under Republican and Democrat chairs for this committee, and we always have agencies come in and tell us their plans for the year and what they want to have done, which is fantastic. But I also want to make sure that there's plenty of time given to hear directly from the schools, directly from the teachers, the superintendents, the school board members about their opinion for various issues going on in the state. And so we started last week hearing about what mandates are doing to your bottom line and to your districts and your ability to serve your students. And today we would like to focus on how state policies can either help or hurt in your experience when it comes to teacher and substitute shortages. And so if everyone could try to limit their comments, again, we separate finance and policy in the Senate. As far as education goes, if you could try to limit your comments to about 3 to 5 minutes on how different policies can either help or hurt you when it comes to the teacher and substitute shortage, I would love to hear all of your ideas and appreciate everyone who's either remote or making time to drive in here. We are going to start with someone from my district. We're going to have Angela Charbonneau-Fulch come to the table. And then on deck, we are going to have Sharon Johnson. And you can, if you're on deck, you can make your way down to the table too, so we can keep things running smoothly. Welcome back to the committee. If you could please state your name for the record, who you're with, and then you can begin your testimony.
Thank you to the Senate Education Committee for having me here today. My name is Angie Charbonneau-Fulch, and I'm the proud principal at the Integrated Arts Academy in Eastern Carver County School District. My school is an ALC high school that serves students in grades 9 through 12. I'm also the state coordinator for the Minnesota Association of Secondary School Principals. Last week when I was here, I touched on how critical the teacher pipeline issue is. In Minnesota, according to the Department of Employment and Economic Development, we are projected to have over 30,000 teacher vacancies within the next 10 years. In Eastern Carver County, we have 13 K through 12 schools, and I asked my fellow principals for some of their thoughts on this topic. One key factor we believe is pay and keeping up with the cost of living. As I prepared my comments for today, I Googled the average income for a first-year teacher in Minnesota. And as of January 2025, the average salary for a first-year teacher in Minnesota is $45,630 per year, or about $21.94 an hour. For a four-year college student thinking about going into education, these numbers matter, especially for college graduates that are coming out of school with college loans and debt to repay. The bottom line, for education to stay competitive, we need to pay our teachers a competitive salary or find incentives that balance out our salaries with other benefits. According to the U.S. Department of Education, about half of our teachers will leave our profession within the first 5 years. And in a 2025 survey, the #1 reason cited is compensation. Access to high-quality health insurance, retirement plans that are more aligned with our other public servants might be incentives worthwhile to examine. For example, the retirement age for our police and fire colleagues is about 55 years old with full benefits after 20 years of service. Whereas educators are expected to work until we are 65 years old, and unless we are willing to take a penalty to retire at 62, and that is with 30 years of service. So I will use myself as an example. At 65 years old, when I'm eligible to retire with full benefits, I will have put in 42 years of service. Another idea is tuition reimbursement and student loan forgiveness. At the federal level, we have been advocating for Loan Forgiveness for Educators Act, the Educator for America Act, and the Preparing and Retaining Education Professional Act. These are all targeted incentives for candidates to serve in education programs in high-need public schools to forgive federal student loans at the end of a 5-year qualifying service. They boost outreach efforts to have a more diverse profession. They expand education residency programs, and they invest in teacher prep programs. These measures also advocate to create partnerships to include grow your own programs, working with local communities, colleges, and universities. There's also the Retain Act that creates fully refundable tax credits for teachers, paraprofessionals, mental health providers, and other education professionals. So perhaps there's a way that we in Minnesota can look at these types of federal legislative bills for us to enact similar solutions here at the state and local levels. The second theme I'm hearing from our principals regarding our teacher pipeline is the increased workload for teachers is leading to early burnout. Principals have advocated for more mental health resources in our schools, but not only for our students, but for our staff as well. As school leaders, we are intentional to foster a positive work environment. We try to allow flexibility where we can to keep staff motivated, but feedback from teachers cite that post-pandemic challenges, managing increasing student behaviors, stress and anxiety over increasing pressures, lack of adequate resources in our buildings, budget cuts, worries of school safety concerns, increasing class sizes, and the negative perceptions in social media have all contributed to the burnout. Due to teacher sub-shortages, our teachers are finding themselves sacrificing their limited preparation time, covering their colleagues, taking on additional work, and in turn, this is actually causing higher absenteeism among staff. Teachers are exhausted and they're worried that this is impacting their effectiveness in our classrooms. Which brings me to the third topic, the substitute teachers in the short call pilot program. While we appreciate the intention of the pilot program to extend a wider net to capture more folks in our sub pools, we want to also ensure that we have high quality substitutes. When our regular teachers are out, we still need to maintain the integrity of levels of teaching and learning happening in our classrooms. And as principals, we are doing our best to support subs so that they want to come back to our buildings. But regardless of the strategies that we use to address the substitute teacher shortages, we cannot sacrifice the quality of instruction for our students. One last consideration. Sometimes we can't fill a position. At my school, I can apply for teachers to have a cross-curricular delivery waiver, being that we are an ALC high school. A cross-curricular delivery permission authorizes a licensed tier 3 or 4 teacher to teach multiple subjects to a group of students. This waiver we have to apply for every year. Perhaps there are more ways to expand this type of option to all schools instead of requiring the out-of-field permission, and perhaps maybe we can extend this waiver to be renewed like every 3 years. Are there other ways that we can make it easier for out-of-state teachers to transfer their license to Minnesota? And are there other ways to tap into highly qualified people without lowering the bar of our profession? These are the questions that we need to look for answers to, and I thank you for your time today and the partnership that you have with our school leaders.
Thank you very much. I believe our next testifier is remote and then on deck, and I apologize to everyone whose last name, if I butcher it, is Ryan, I think, Irk, and Angie Flowers up after that. So Ms. Johnson, if you'd like to unmute yourself, state your name and who you're with for the record, and you can begin your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Sharon Johnson, and I serve as the Community Education Director for District 518 in Worthington, Minnesota. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present today. I will be speaking about the tiered licensure process. I'm very grateful that the tiered licensure process exists because it is a much-needed means for school districts to fill open positions. And specifically, my experience with the tiered licensure relates to early childhood, birth through 3rd grade teachers. Changes were made to the tiered licensure system last year that made it more complicated rather than easier for some people to advance from a tier 1 to a tier 2 license, because the only path to a tier 2 license is by attending a Minnesota college or university. This can be problematic because not every degree is equitably available in the Minnesota higher education systems. Additionally, the requirement for non-renewing tier 1 teachers makes extra work for administrators, causes unnecessary stress for the non-renewed individuals, and deters people from completing the advancement process. So I want to share a little bit about the impact of the problem in a local setting so that you can understand how this is working out in the communities. In our early childhood department, 55% of the 11 teachers have a tier 1 or 2 license, which shows a significant shortage of teachers in this field. We have 4 tier 1 early childhood teachers. There are 2 first-year and 2 second-year teachers in this group. The 2 second-year teachers are pursuing master's degrees with initial licensure online from an out-of-state university. The 2 first-year teachers are pursuing a second bachelor's degree online from a Minnesota university. All 4 are doing an excellent job of teaching their students, but the current system requires that I non-renew all 4 of them this spring. So looking at our local experience, the 2 second-year early childhood teachers who have chosen to pursue a master's degree with initial licensure from a university outside of Minnesota will not be able to advance to a tier 2 license again this year because they do not attend a Minnesota college or university. And then in the spring of 2026, as 3rd-year teachers who have been stuck on tier 1, they would have to be non-renewed again, even though they will have completed their master's degrees and student teaching in the field. So finally, over the summer of 2026, they'll be able to apply for a tier 3 license, skipping tier 2 altogether, and their first 3 years of teaching will not count toward tenure. Meanwhile, the 2 first-year teachers who enrolled for a second bachelor's degree program will have completed only 1 year of coursework in a Minnesota college, will be allowed to advance to tier 2 license status this summer. They will not need to be non-renewed in the spring of 2026. And their second and third years of teaching will count toward future tenure. The new system put in place this year simply does not make sense. In my opinion, successfully completing a year of teaching experience along with steady progress toward a field-specific degree should qualify an individual to be able to make steady progress through the tiered licenses. And you have the opportunity to solve this problem. You can remove the requirement that an individual be enrolled in a Minnesota college or university in order to advance to a Tier 2 licensure. And you can remove the requirement that Tier 1 teachers be non-renewed each year. The decision whether to non-renew or not could be left to the individual school district. Thank you for your time and consideration of these recommendations.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name and who you're with for the record, and then you may begin.
Hi, I'm Ryan Erkey. I am an elementary principal in St. Charles, Minnesota, which is between Rochester and Winona. And I've been a high school principal, similarly in rural schools. I want to talk about the teacher shortage as it relates to out-of-field permissions. So 7 years ago when I began being a principal in an elementary school, I had over 150 applicants for an open elementary position. In a rural school, that's awesome. 20 years ago, that would have been over 800 applicants. This past year, I had 15. Schools are desperate for people, but we continue to find that the state's red tape when it comes to licensing gets in the way specifically of rural schools' ability to staff our buildings. Last year, I had an elementary music position open for which I had 0 applicants. There were people in my community who were willing to step up, but they were not licensed. These are people who have backgrounds in music, who have been working with our schools in other capacities, but don't have a teaching license. I had an elementary ed teacher who was willing to teach out of field, but did not have a music license. This is a license that a teacher can have only 5 times in their career, and for which we must post their position every year. Even with the support of a principal, with great evaluations, her position would have to be posted and she would have to spend thousands of dollars going back to school in order to get the right license. Because of all of the red tape involved with her getting the right license for the job that she was doing and doing an exemplary job at, she decided not to continue on as a music teacher in our district and requested to be put back into a gen ed position. Similarly, I have an art teacher with an elementary ed license who originally was hired at a 0.2 FTE as a visual arts teacher in our school. An elementary ed license can teach up to 0.33 perfectly legally under an elementary license, but anything over a 0.33 when it comes to music, phy ed, or visual arts, they are not licensed and must get an out-of-field permission. This teacher stepped up during COVID. We needed to spread kids out. We needed places to put those kids, and she became full-time during that time. However, because she was not fully qualified for that, we had to do an out-of-field permission for her. She now has 5 years of full-time experience, 1 year of part-time experience, all teaching visual arts with exemplary evaluations. But according to the state, she is not qualified for her job and can only teach art out of field for a few more years because of extensions to that rule. However, a person with no education license at all could teach on a Tier 2 alternative pathway license and would be given a full license in the field after only 3 years of good evaluations and passing a test. I find that to be backwards. Our district, like every other district, is struggling to find the right kind of science teacher because there are multiple licensing areas in high school science. Again, if we hire someone out of field, which many rural schools are forced to do, because if you have 3 sections of science in your school, you only have 3 science teachers, but we need 4 separate science licenses because of the requirements when it comes to coursework. So we inevitably have to put one of those three on an out-of-field permission. That science teacher can either spend thousands of dollars going back to school to get the right license, or simply decide after 5 years, no, I don't want to teach out of field anymore. So our system shouldn't be that difficult. If someone is willing to step up and serve our kids and is getting positive evaluations from their principal, from their administration, I believe that we should issue them a proper license. If we have people who are willing to step up, which currently we are struggling to get, we should be helping those people get that license as opposed to telling them they have to go back to school, spend thousands of their own dollars to get a license that we are asking them to get. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Up next, we have Angie Flowers, and on deck, Val Ray Bowe. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and who you're with.
Good afternoon, members of the Senate and members of the committee. My name is Angie Flowers, and I serve as the General Counsel and Executive Director of Human Resources at Minnetonka Public Schools. Thank you for having me here today and allowing me to speak on the important matter of teacher staffing. It is so important to ensure that we have qualified teachers in front of each and every student, and that we do so without stretching our current teaching staff too thin. When we don't have enough teachers in classrooms, other teachers must cover those classrooms, and they lose preparation time that they had for their regularly scheduled courses. This can also pull principals and building leaders away from their daily task if they need to cover a classroom. Students in Minnesota need and deserve to have consistent teachers. Teachers who know how to differentiate in their teaching methods for the students they have grown to know. Currently, our state has 4 different tiered licensing systems for teachers. And I appreciate these tiers because they allow us some flexibility when we are unable to find licensed teachers in certain content areas due to the continuing teacher shortage. I'd like to take a moment to speak about tiers 1 and 2, as tiers 3 and 4 are more aligned to traditional licensure pathways. Tier 1 licensure allows teachers with a bachelor's degree to renew their licenses up to 3 times, and each licensure cycle lasts 1 year. However, for special education teachers, the maximum time allowed to hold a Tier 1 license is 1 year less at only 3 years. Tier 1 special education teachers are required to have ongoing professional development and mentorship. This is a good thing, and this ensures that students are receiving the education that they deserve at a high quality level. And it's also a reason to support Tier 1 special education teachers for the ability to teach for 4 years, similar to other Tier 1 teachers. Special education is our highest area of need in the state, impacted by the teacher shortage. And anything we can do to support our students and their success in special education is appreciated. Tier 2 licensure allows teachers with a bachelor's degree coupled with a teaching program, or those who have a master's degree, to renew their license up to 3 times, with each licensure cycle lasting 2 years. There used to be more pathways to a Tier 2 license, including a teacher could take a certain number of upper level courses in the content area, coupled with 2 years of teaching experience. Teacher candidates can no longer have these additional pathways. This was formerly known as the Pick 2 option. This allowed more teachers to get a Tier 2 license and credit toward tenure as a probationary teacher. Bringing back some of the options in the Pick 2 pathway would allow districts such as mine to put more qualified teachers in front of students and allow us to fill more of our vacancies. In addition, extending the time that licenses are valid and allowing teachers to renew beyond the maximum time periods currently in place would help to reduce the cost impact on teachers and the time of districts with the constant renewing and the rehiring. It would really help with continuous employment as we manage the teacher shortage. In addition, these licenses require a job offer before they are issued. This can deter people from pursuing those licenses, and it makes it a bit riskier for districts to make those offers. I would like to thank the legislature for lengthening the time of substitute teachers from 15 days to 20 days, and also allowing persons with associate degrees to qualify to teach as substitute teachers. However, the minimum salary of $200 per day for people with associate's degree can be a hindrance and restrict us from hiring if we can't afford that rate. And I know many districts are in that situation, including my own district. It would be easier without that requirement to utilize those teachers with an associate degree, or if we had funding to support it. These pathways are not about lowering the bar. These pathways are about getting highly qualified people and people consistently in front of our students so they can reach and excel in their academic success. Thank you for your time today and all the work you do to support our communities.
Thank you very much. Up next, we have Val Ray-Bowe. On deck, Nicole Woodward. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name and who you're with for the record and begin your testimony.
My name is Val Ray-Bowe. I'm the superintendent of Northeast Metro Intermediate District 916. Good afternoon, Chairs Coleman and Zwadzinski and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today and for your initial investment in the intermediate districts, allowing us to start the first iTrack teacher apprenticeship program. Collectively, our 4 intermediates serve 45 member districts, providing specialized services to students with the most significant needs, including those served in setting for special education. This year, the intermediates launched Minnesota's first registered teacher apprenticeship program, the Intermediate Teacher Residency Apprenticeship Collaborative, or iTrack. It's designed to address the critical and growing shortage of special education teachers. This shortage is at a crisis level, particularly in the most complex educational settings. Across Minnesota, 9.75% of teachers are working without a standard license. This figure is alarmingly higher in intermediates, at 21% of educators teaching on an out-of-field license, thus lacking the necessary preparation to be considered highly qualified special education teachers. Additionally, we see the majority of special education teachers graduating from teacher prep programs holding an academic behavior strategist, or ABS, license, which focuses on mild to moderate disabilities, leaving teachers unprepared to address the complex and intensive needs of students in setting for programs. These factors highlight the urgency of addressing the teacher shortage in intermediate districts where students require highly specialized teacher expertise. We have seen increasing referrals to our setting for programs at a rate of 3% each year over the last decade. These environments are highly demanding, requiring a unique combination of skills and robust support systems for staff and students to thrive. Paraprofessionals play a vital role in the daily operations of our program, and a growing body of research highlights their potential as an untapped pipeline for future special education teachers. The iTrack Teacher Apprenticeship Program is a high-impact solution to the special education teacher workforce shortage. Many of our paras are passionate about continuing their careers, but face significant barriers to becoming licensed teachers. These include the financial burden of higher education and the challenge of balancing work, family, and school commitments. By addressing these barriers, we help paras achieve their goals and build a stronger, more stable special education workforce. At Intermediate 916, we have 7 paras enrolled in the program, with an average tenure of 5.5 years at the time of their application in iTrack. This is beyond the typical burnout rate in setting 4, giving us high confidence in projecting career longevity. Additionally, research shows that teachers with prior experience as paraprofessionals have higher retention rates in special education compared to those entering through traditional pathways because their lived experience equips them to handle the demands of the job, contributing to greater job satisfaction and effectiveness. This is a critical advantage in the field plagued by burnout and high turnover. iTrack provides a structured pathway for paras to earn their teacher license while continuing to work in their current roles. The Teacher Apprenticeship Program combines coursework, mentorship, and hands-on experience, creating a seamless transition from para to licensed teacher. This innovative model not only meets the immediate need for our teachers, but also cultivates professionals who are deeply rooted in the mission of serving students with disabilities. We have already seen the benefits of iTrack, with the apprentices reporting feeling valued and supported in their professional growth. They also bring a wealth of knowledge to their coursework and classroom experience, enriching the learning environment for their peers and ultimately the future students. Most importantly, our students benefit from the continuity and stability of having educators who are deeply invested in their success. At 9/16, we anticipate that iTrack will allow us to start the 26-27 school year fully staffed with highly qualified special education teachers. But addressing the special education teacher workforce shortage is about more than filling vacancies. It's about creating a workforce that is prepared, resilient, and committed to the success of our most vulnerable learners. My hope today was to provide you with an overview of our work to expand the educator workforce through our apprenticeship program. You'll be hearing more from us in the future about our legislative request to provide $3 million annually to sustain this extremely valuable program. By investing in our programs like iTrack Teacher Apprenticeship Model, we can invest in the expertise of our paraprofessionals, reducing turnover and improving outcomes for students with disabilities. Thank you for your time and thoughtful consideration.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name and who you're with for the record. We'll do questions at the end. Oh, sure. Yep, I'll get that for you. Thank you. Sorry about that. Welcome to the committee. Our next two testifiers will be remote, so go ahead and start.
Awesome. Hello. Greetings. My name is Nicole Woodward. I am the Executive Director for the St. Croix River Education District, affectionately known as SCRED. I also serve as the Legislative Tri-Chair for the Minnesota Administrators for Special Education. So Chairs Coleman and Swedzinski, members, thank you so much for giving me the space to speak with you today. SCRED serves 6 school districts in greater Minnesota, each grappling with the same question. How do we ensure that every child, including each child with a disability, has a fully licensed and highly qualified teacher in their classroom? In my role, I see firsthand the impact our state's teacher workforce has on students, schools, parents, and communities, especially as it relates to special education. Vacancies are increasing, and the pipeline of new educators simply is not keeping pace. Students aren't getting their needs met, teachers are burning out, and our communities are demanding better results. I am grateful that in Minnesota, our state licensing board has allowed for a number of short-term options that provide districts with flexibility during this critical workforce shortage. Licensed teachers in other areas can obtain an out-of-field permission or an OFP, and community members who have a bachelor's degree and relevant experience can obtain a Tier 1 license. The reality is that our schools are increasingly relying on long-term substitutes, underprepared candidates, or burning out the dedicated teachers with unsustainable workloads in this current state. We know that OFPs and Tier 1 licenses are not the sustainable model. They're not the long-term solution, yet these special permissions are providing invaluable relief in an already strained system. Of the 148 necessary special education teaching positions across my districts, 11 teachers are on a Tier 1 license, meaning they have no formal training in education, and 17 teachers are on an out-of-field permission. So those licensed, fully qualified teachers in other areas lending their talents to special education. Some quick math, that's almost 20% of our workforce in special ed in my system. And as of today, 4 special education teaching and related service positions remain unfilled. It is important that you know that there are a number of innovative initiatives being implemented in our system. We are working collaboratively with entities like PELSB to reimagine our licensure system. We are working with the Department of Labor and Industry to implement a teacher apprenticeship program. My districts are participating in the Teacher Pipeline Grant, which was an amazing opportunity provided by the state last year. We're doing the work. We're being part of the solution. But we need some help. Over the last several years, in recognition of the ongoing workforce shortage, the Professional Educator Licensing and Standards Board, you never say it fully, so PELSB, has identified a number of singular years that will not count toward the 5-time lifetime limit of an OFP, and that's been great. We know that there should be limits. We don't want an OFP to be the long-term solution. However, we need it now. And so we believe that by extending that grace period and taking legislative action to allow for a full 5-year grace period for the future to give us a chance to build up this workforce, to strengthen our infrastructure, make that pipeline robust, that would allow great relief to our system. In addition, as you've already heard, when we have Tier 1 teachers on Tier 1 licenses, we need to non-renew those teachers in the spring, repost their positions for 60 days, see what happens, and then potentially give them those jobs back. Yes, that's an administrative burden, but the more serious impact of that current process is that it deters those candidates from staying in those positions. We support Tier 1 teachers with robust training and onboarding programs. They're assigned a mentor. In our system, each Tier 1 teacher is assigned an individual coach to support them in their experience of learning in the profession. In addition, the Office of Special Education Programs limits Tier 1 licenses to 3 years. You can't get any more than that. And we understand that. We acknowledge that limits are important. So our ask there is that, again, those reposting requirements be eliminated and allow those natural limits to serve their purpose so that we can use those 3 years to support those Tier 1 teachers in exploring, is this the field for me? Will I enter a program in the state of Minnesota? And many of them do. So removing that anxiety and that stress from that non-renewal process would be a great benefit. Further, we're looking for some flexibilities and some other options. You've heard before some of the limitations with those requirements to obtain a Tier 2 license. A big problem in the area of special education is we simply don't have some programs in Minnesota that match the special ed licensure areas that are required. So those districts or those teachers, for example, need to go out of state. They might need to do one of those programs in another state because we don't have a program for the teachers of the blind, visually impaired, for example. So we're just looking for a little support as we work together to create some flexibilities so that we can build a system that works and builds this workforce with integrity well into the future. Thank you again for your time in hearing our stories today. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you very much. Up next, remotely, we have Mandy Fletcher. If you could please unmute your microphone, state your name and who you're with for the record, and then begin your testimony. We have her on.
Good afternoon. My name is Mandy Fletcher. I'm superintendent of Blue Earth Area Schools. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts. I was just up there on Monday speaking with many of you. Otherwise, I would have loved to have turned around and come back today to be there in person. Chairs Coleman and Swedzinski and members of the committee, addressing Minnesota's teacher shortage has long included the strategy of attracting qualified educators from other states. However, the current licensing process poses significant challenges, particularly as districts increasingly fill positions later in the summer. For instance, here at Blue Earth Area Schools, we employ 93 certified staff. 5 of those were hired after July 1 for this current year. The guideline of 30 days to process a teaching license application from submission of materials to issuance is problematic, especially for out-of-state candidates. A recent case at Blue Earth Area highlights this issue. In late September of this year, Blue Earth Area added a kindergarten section due to an unexpected influx of students. We hired a teacher who completed an Iowa teaching program on November 25th, 2024. She promptly applied for teaching licenses in both Iowa and Minnesota upon finalizing her transcripts. Pelsby acknowledged receipt of her application on December 7th and issued her license on January 2nd. During this time, she began teaching under the supervision of an interim teacher. While the holiday break may have contributed to this delay, similar timelines occur throughout the year. In addition, to ensure teachers from other states are fully licensed by the first day of school, applications must be submitted no later than late July. However, as this example highlights, districts are filling positions well into the summer and into August, leaving this timeline impractical. Another example we often face is when filling an open teaching position mid-year due to a leave of absence. We often face significant delays in processing paperwork for qualified candidates. Despite completing their teaching programs through approved Minnesota institutions, it can often take weeks for the universities to submit the necessary documentation to Pelsby and/or the candidate. We have found that institutions are usually lightly staffed over breaks, which often follows when students complete their programs, adding to the delay. As a result, even though these candidates are prepared to teach immediately, we must wait for their paperwork to be finalized. Yet during this period, they may engage with students and prepare lessons. However, we're still required to pay another teacher to serve as the official teacher of record. We'd like to propose implementing some short-term provisional license options for qualified candidates, such as those who may have expired Minnesota licenses after having years of teaching experience, but due to the teacher shortage would like to come back and help out, who have valid out-of-state licenses, who have recently graduated from Minnesota teacher licensing programs, or currently have a lifetime substitute license. This would allow districts to staff classrooms promptly while educators and institutions complete the steps needed for required paperwork to be processed. This solution would streamline hiring, minimize classroom disruptions, and ensure students have access to qualified teachers without delay. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Up next, we have Molly Schilling remotely. If you could please unmute your microphone, state your name and who you're with for the record, and begin your testimony.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify today about the critical issue of teacher shortages and the need for legislative amendments to increase flexibility in the teaching licensing process. I'm Molly Schilling, Superintendent of Adrian Public School. I'm also representing other Southwest Minnesota school districts such as Hills Beaver Creek, Lake Benton, and Westbrook Walnut Grove as we were advocating together on this issue. The practical adjustment that we are asking for is applying to Minnesota Statute 122A.181 as well as 122A.182 concerning Tier 1 and Tier 2 teacher licensing to help address the teacher shortage. Our schools face unprecedented challenges in recruiting and retaining qualified educators. The shortage affects urban, suburban, and rural districts alike. For years, subject areas like special ed, mathematics, and science have been difficult to staff, but now even general positions struggle to attract applicants. A rural Southwest Minnesota district reported a 10-month advertising period for a third grade teaching position without a single applicant. This shortage burdens existing educators and compromises the quality of education for all students. The tiered licensing system, which allows individuals with four-year degrees in other fields to teach temporarily, has been a very valuable tool. However, the current system's rigidity, especially regarding timelines for Tier 1 and Tier 2 licenses, limits our ability to respond to staffing needs effectively. I would like to propose changing the Minnesota Statute 122A.181 for the Tier 1 license and the 122A.182 for the Tier 2 license in Subdivision 4 to provide for more flexibility. The revised language would allow Pellsby to accept applications for Tier 1 and Tier 2 on or before June 1st instead of July 1st. This change provides applicants and schools an additional 30 days to apply, ask questions, and receive timely answers from Pellsby, ensuring staff can be licensed before the school year begins. Delays in licensing often prevent teachers from starting on time, which impacts their success and diminishes student opportunities. By allowing Pellsby the discretion to review applications earlier, districts can plan staffing for the upcoming school year more effectively. The current July 1st start date leaves districts scrambling over the summer and into the school year. Earlier review would facilitate smoother transitions and minimize disruptions for students. When we have successfully secured a staff member in July with license approvals, we are able to better prepare new to the field teachers with like a boot camp type style experience with administrators and lead teachers early in August for a few days. This provides them a running start and a few extra weeks with curriculum, planning, and getting their rooms ready, etc., before the start of the regular pre-service professional development. In addition to the proposed amendment, I would also urge the committee to consider the measures already mentioned today with the timeline of the Tier 1 and Tier 2 teachers, as well as the OFP licenses. I believe it would be beneficial to expand the length of time that they can have those licenses or the number of times they can apply. As was stated earlier, it's not necessarily a forever thing, but we are in a shortage right now. And the change from the Tier 1 to get to the Tier 2 is very complicated. So to have some additional resources for the portfolio process would also be very much appreciated. We have 2 individuals in Adrian currently that are starting the portfolio process, but they're a little hesitant because we don't hear a lot of success stories around the portfolio process for teachers to jump from a Tier 1 to a Tier 2. Both of these individuals have bachelor's degrees, but the one actually took quite a large pay cut when he wanted to do something more beneficial and meaningful with his life and leaving the private industry to come and teach. So to be able to afford to enroll in another university for another bachelor's degree or master's degree is not something that they're interested in doing, and it's not something that the school district unfortunately can pay for either. So looking for additional support for the portfolio process and expanding the number of times an OFP, a Tier 1 or a Tier 2 application could be utilized would be greatly beneficial in this time of shortage. So in conclusion, the teacher shortage crisis, it needs immediate attention, and I know that you are listening, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the work that you are doing to help us overcome these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. This next one I've been stressing out about pronouncing all day, so we'll see how this goes. Up next we have Haben Gebergergish. How close did I get? Okay. I'm trying to write them all down. Thank you. I apologize for butchering your name. Please introduce yourself for the record, who you're with, and begin your testimony.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Haben Gebergergish. I was a proud educator in Minnesota for 5 years and a total of 10 years in education. And I come before you as representing Good Trouble, as a movement maker, and I'll talk a little bit about what we do in just a moment. So, as I mentioned, my name is Haben Gebergergish. I spent 10 years as a high school educator, 5 of those in St. Paul. I also hold a master's degree in education from Hamline University, which I earned in 2022. I now work with Good Trouble, which is a youth-led movement to make schools more motivating and by meeting young people's core needs for belonging, real meaningful work and purpose. I believe that Minnesota's rigid teacher licensure system is keeping high-quality educators out of the classroom, and the changes that the legislator has made 2 years ago has placed additional barriers to teacher licensure that disproportionately impact teachers of color, career and technical teachers, as well as special education teachers. A little bit about me. I started my teaching career in Detroit through the University of Michigan's alternate route to certification, and I taught in Detroit, Michigan for 4 years. To earn my teaching certificate, I had to attend weekly evening classes and monthly Saturday professional development sessions for 2 years. I submitted a portfolio that included my vision and mission as an educator and a long body of work. I also received monthly observations and reports from coaches. This isn't dissimilar to many alternative teaching programs in many other states. When I moved back to Minnesota in 2018, after 4 years of teaching experience, the Tier 2 licensure option allowed me to remain in the classroom, which is what I wanted to do. The experience that I had in Detroit helped me to get licensed. If teaching experience did not mean something, I would not have been able to get that license. That is because at that time, I didn't have a master's degree. It's very important that applicants can use prior teaching experience to qualify for a Tier 2 license. Throughout my career, I have found that my greatest professional growth has come from the experience of teaching itself. If we want passionate people to enter education, Minnesota should open up as many opportunities as possible. For me, that door was being able to use my prior teaching experience. But the path towards Tier 2 licensure has become more narrow. It now requires enrolling in a teacher preparation program in Minnesota, or getting a master's degree, or completing an out-of-state preparation program that's completely aligned to a Minnesota teacher preparation program. It's important to be aware that all of these things require money and significant resources, and as such will be a barrier to teachers, especially teachers of color. So if we're going to require these things of our people, there should be financial support, coaching, and other things to help them meet those requirements. For me, it was incredibly important for students to see a Black teacher who looked like them, because it helped foster a sense of belonging and pride in their identity. We know that representation is incredibly important, and seeing someone who shares similar experiences and backgrounds can inspire confidence in our young people and show them that they too can succeed and achieve their goals. About 1 out of every 4 teachers of color in Minnesota use Tier 1 and Tier 2. So closing any pathways would reduce, not improve, our work to increase teacher diversity. So I believe the state of Minnesota should be focused on recruiting more teachers that are truly passionate about their content areas and about young people. In order to achieve this end, it needs to provide flexible pathways to licensure that supports diverse groups of people who want to enter the noble teaching profession. If we implement requirements that demand a significant financial investment, we must also ensure that diverse teachers have access to financial support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I see you brought students with you today.
I did. These are 2 of my young people that are part of Good Trouble, and they're here, because they've benefited greatly from the Tier 1 and Tier 2 teachers. So they're here in support.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Matt Shaver. If you could make your way down to the testifiers table.
Chair Coleman, Chair Swedzinski, good afternoon. My name is Matt Shaver, and I'm an elementary school teacher and the Senior Policy Director at Ed Allies. We're education advocates for students. Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts about the teacher shortage today. This is an extremely complicated topic that's worthy of this committee's time. There aren't a lot of silver bullet solutions here, but there are lots and lots of things that can make a difference to do. As an upper elementary school teacher, I started a lot of classes with a Do Now activity, and if we were in my classroom, I'd ask members of this committee to take 2 silent minutes to write down on a piece of paper what the teacher shortage is. I'd take some volunteers after that to share their definition, and probably do a little cold calling on some of our committee's more reluctant participators to share their thoughts and their definitions. And I think we'd pretty quickly find out we have 12 super thoughtful people with very different ideas of what it is we even mean when we say the words teacher shortage. And that's actually the reality in law as well. The legislature has spent millions of dollars in recent years on programs like the Teacher Shortage Loan Repayment Program, Come Teach in Minnesota hiring bonuses, and the Student Teacher and Shortage Area Grants without establishing an overarching statutory definition of what the teacher shortage is. And to be clear, these are all good and worthy investments. The question is, without a clear definition of what we are trying to solve with these investments and policies aimed at addressing the shortage, how will we know if they're making a difference? Does anybody have a guess of how many math teachers short we are in Minnesota right now? You don't have to say it. Sorry, you can't take the teacher out of the policy, dude. The answer, as of last year, is at least 197. So that's how many math teachers were short in Minnesota. It's kind of an unsatisfying answer, right? And whether that sounds like the right number or way off to you, what might be more important is who counted that and what were they counting? So Section 122A.06 subdivision 6 leaves the definition of the teacher shortage up to Pellsby to define and report on. So the 197 number comes from them. The reporting component of this statute makes a ton of sense. Pellsby collects lots of data. So what are they counting to get to this number? So 197 is the number of people licensed and actively teaching math to children in Minnesota public schools that don't have a Tier 3 or a Tier 4 license. The way it's measured now, if one of these 197 math teachers quits in the middle of the school year, though, our teacher shortage doesn't grow, it actually shrinks, because that's one less person with a Tier 2 math license in our schools. So we think it's actually kind of a problem to have such a limited perspective on what the teacher shortage is. And if we're serious about solving this, we ought to have a holistic way of thinking about what we are trying to accomplish with policies and resources. Thankfully, anyone here who was in the Senate in the spring of 2022 already voted in favor of a bill that would provide legislative structure and direction around what the teacher shortage even is. Senate File 2952 passed the Senate 65-0 in May 2022, but your colleagues in the other body dropped the ball that last weekend and it didn't get across the finish line. And it was good policy then, and our kids are losing out on great teachers because it's not law now. That bill, authored by Senator Duckworth and carefully negotiated with Pellsby and Education Minnesota, would have established a much clearer definition of teacher shortages that would have included a measurement of unfilled positions by licensure area to have a more accurate picture of our workforce needs. States like Illinois report real-time vacancy data where, for example, you can see the clear relationship between student poverty and unfilled positions. And look at those inequities and injustices in education that the legislature is tasked with addressing. This better data in Illinois led to investments in a vacancy grant pilot project that sought to decrease vacancies in hard-to-staff schools, in hard-to-staff fields, and as of fall 2024, have really made a ton of progress in decreasing those vacancies for kids. And that's the point of good data. Use it to solve problems. So the way we currently think about and measure the teacher shortage is missing significant context. Two other quick items. In 2023, the legislature removed several ways to qualify as a licensed Tier 2 teacher. Since 2023, the number of Tier 2 teachers have decreased and the number of Tier 1 teachers have increased, where they now have limited ways of moving up the licensure tiers. These non-traditional pathways to the classroom are disproportionately used by educators of color, and the state made them more difficult to navigate. And this is at the expense of educators and students. The simple path forward is to restore those Tier 2 qualifications and give folks who are coming from non-traditional backgrounds the opportunity to serve their communities by becoming teachers. And finally, I will always encourage you to hear from teachers on the topic of the teacher shortage. I also want to highlight a report at Allies did in 2024 where we asked people of color who had considered or tried to become teachers in Minnesota but ultimately did not, in order to gain a better understanding of what the obstacles and actual barriers were to entering the profession. The feedback was really fascinating and varied, but the one item everyone cited was the prospect of unpaid student teaching. There are 2 higher ed programs that provide stipends for student teaching, as well as the new pilot program. All great ideas with serious resources behind them. However, what we are learning in the implementation of these things is that these dollars are being siphoned away by higher ed institutions before they ever hit the pockets of student teachers. Student teachers are signing up and expecting paychecks of $7,500 to be able to spend as they see fit for their work. Instead, people are winding up with nothing, or in one case we learned about from the Office of Higher Education, last year, one student teacher of color was, quote, awarded $96 for their 12 weeks of student teaching work, which comes out to about 20 cents an hour. Welcome to the profession. So So that's unacceptable, but also solvable. We got to get these stipends out of financial aid and into the pockets of student teachers so that they can have the resources they need to clear this final, crucial hurdle toward becoming a licensed teacher. There's more, but thank you all for your time today in service to the state.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions or comments? Senator Wiesenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Questions, comments, I know, and whoever wants to speak, Matt may have some comments, but I was just writing down as I was hearing people speak, and I always draw on my own experiences just to relate to what's going on. So I look at this tiered licensure thing, and my mom's been teaching for 50 years, so where does a person, not just my mom, but I'm just looking at that in general, like where do teachers like that she's a substitute teacher who have been doing this for a very long time and might just has a bachelor's degree, but has all, 50 years of experience. And how can we get people like that to, maybe we can hire them because they don't need a master's degree or they don't need to do these things. She's very, very highly sought after. She gets like 20 calls a day sometimes from all kinds of school districts, and people just love her, how she teaches, right? So let's take people like that and let's help them. If they don't fall into this, what does it mean to have a master's degree or a PhD in something if you don't understand how you're teaching either? I had a teacher at St. Cloud State University. He had a PhD in wildlife biology, but he didn't know the difference between an antler and a horn. No. Why is he teaching me mammalogy when he can't understand that, right? So there's value in the education, but now that we used to all need a bachelor's degree. Now we all need a master's degree. And now we all need, this. If a teacher has a passion, they know what they're doing, why are we falling back on this if they're a good teacher? So we need to help. I'm just talking, but how do we get these people involved, and how do we help these people are saying, what you're doing to me, it's broken. We need good quality educators, but the rules that you're giving to me, we can't do it, right? So let's help these people that we heard today. Let's help the people that we heard last week, and the unfunded mandates and all these priorities that we're putting that teachers need to know. Sounds like they're actually hurting the students and not helping education. So sounds like we need to roll some of this back. We really need to dive into that. And I just wrote down, reimagine what it's like to be a good teacher, right? This is going to sound funny, but I wrote down Jimi Hendrix. He knew how to play guitar, but he didn't go to school to learn how to do it, right? He was great at it. And there's other people like that. Artists, they're great artists, but they didn't go to school and get a PhD. But maybe they're really good at what they can do and they can really teach it. Now I know there's a safety aspect in making sure people are good with kids and things, but just because you have a master's degree or a PhD doesn't mean you're going to be the best person. Someone with a bachelor's degree and the heart and the ambition that really wants to teach our kids, that's what we want in schools. And just because you have that degree behind your name doesn't mean that you are that person. So I hear you and I'm listening, and it's frustrating because I want the best person to teach kids in schools no matter who you are. And it doesn't mean that you have to have a master's degree and whatever. So thank you.
Any other member questions? Comment, Senator Abler, followed by Senator Duckworth.
Well, thanks. And I think this is a meaningful discussion. I hope that people that are writing policy bills are listening. I hope that the commissioner and the department are listening. I think we pass laws here. One of the laws that we actually don't pass is the law of unintended consequences. I don't think anybody set out when we were looking at this in the last couple of years about how to make sure we have, qualified teachers and, credentials and all that we're actually going to dry up the supply. And I don't think that some of the comments by the superintendents are that we meant for really good teachers that are liking it, that after 3 years they have to stop. And whether it be math or special ed or not, it simply has to work. We're a very developed country, very developed state and a very developed country, and we have law books that are, longer than the space between my two colleagues here, that we have agreed at some point are good ideas. We just need to, I think we need to look at this again, and I don't think we have done the thing we intended to do. And there's a term, qualified versus certified, and so often Senator Wiesenberg was kind of referencing it. There's people that are really good at what they do, but they don't have a credential, so they can't get a bid in a certain kind of a job or something. And that's true here. I just want to remind everybody, I've carried the Teachers of Color bill a couple times. We got a start on it, and everybody's for that. According to this paper, wherever this one came from, we have a robust 4.35% highly qualified teachers of color cadre in a world where something better than 15% are people of color. Maybe we're pushing 20%. I don't know the exact number, but it's, oh yeah, in schools, yeah, okay. But it's a huge number, 40%, I'll even go with that. So we have 1/10 the number that we have, and yet we're making it harder. And I hope that in this world where we're actually caring about the outcomes, we can improve upon that. So, and do what we mean and fight against the law of unintended consequences. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it, and I very much appreciate everybody who was here today to give us some feedback and real-life solutions, tweaks, and changes that could actually be beneficial to our schools and to our classrooms and ultimately to our students. I think this is my 5th year now on Education Committee in the Senate, and we keep talking about the same thing. Teacher shortage. Everybody knows we have one, and we keep hearing that we haven't really done much to improve upon it. And what I appreciate is when people actually come to us and when we don't have to think of the solution. We've literally been told these are the things you need to do. I think from a teacher's perspective, they would literally say the answers to the test are staring us in the face and have been for years, yet for some reason we keep refusing to write them down on the piece of paper and turn it in. Matt had to bring up a bill from back in the day just to get me fired up because it didn't pass. It would have been helpful. But here's what I would say to all my colleagues on the committee right now. We just heard a bunch of solutions that would not cost the state any money, that could be passed in the form of a bill by the end of February and ultimately signed by the governor whenever our other chamber decides to start meeting and could pass a similar bill to get it to them. Like, if that's not the takeaway from today, I don't know what is. There's nothing magical about what was shared here today other than the fact that we have to do it. And the other thing about those suggestions are they're all common sense, and not one of those suggestions were political. Unless, of course, you make it so. So why don't we take some advice from these folks, implement the common sense solutions they have brought to us, that they're asking for, that they're telling us will make a difference when it comes to our kids who, oh, by the way, continue to slide backward when it comes to literacy rates and the scores on math and science tests. If we don't implement even just one of these solutions this year in this session, that's a failure, because it'll be however many times in a row that we didn't do something about it, and we have a chance to do so. So I look forward to seeing all these suggestions in a bill, and I look forward to seeing it pass in a bipartisan manner. One more thing, Madam Chair. All these folks came forward last year and told us about the issues that were going to happen when it came to Tier 2 licensure changes. After 5 years, we haven't gone forward, we've gone backward. We've made it more complicated for teachers, superintendents, and principals to actually solve this issue. We've got to correct it. We've got to do something about it. And one quick question for you, Madam Chair. Did you turn away any testifiers for today's hearing regarding this matter?
Not that I'm aware of.
So if I may, it's great that we heard from all the people that we heard from today, but we didn't hear from the biggest organization that claims to represent teachers. And you just heard nobody was turned away from testifying today. If you are an organization that represents teachers and students and want to do something and fix this problem, we could sure benefit to hear from you.
Any other member comments or questions? Senator McQuaid.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I really want to thank all of the testifiers who came and shared, specifics and gave specific solutions, specific tiers, specific issues that are impacting people's desire to be in the classroom, because we have a lot more licensed teachers in this state than we have teachers in the classroom, right? And so, at the very beginning, I think it was Principal Charbonneau-Fulch had a laundry list, and it was, safety. It was how the teaching profession is treated or denigrated, class sizes, pay, student loan forgiveness. I mean, this issue, we're seeing the desire to be in the classroom is affected by the life of a teacher. And so I want to be sure that in this committee, we are addressing the issues, but we can't pretend that that there are silver bullets and that the way that we treat the education professionals that work in our schools, the way we talk about them, what we put onto them, the societal ills that we ask them to deal with every single day, and then wonder why they're leaving the classroom. And so I just want to be, we had, I think it was Principal Charbonneau-Foltz who talked about the difference in retiring. Like, I'm 38 and I'm tired chasing around 2.5-year-old. I don't imagine being 60 and chasing around like 37-year-olds, right? And not having retirement and benefits and all those things. Those are very, very real. So I really want to thank folks for coming in, and I don't want us to pretend like the answers are just like right here and we're just choosing not to do them because they're complex and they're many. I also want to give a special shout out to the intermediate districts for their very, very well done proposal on increasing in the apprentice program. It was a partnership with DLI and with the intermediate districts. And, I brag sometimes that I created personally with a bill, like almost 30 teachers, more special education teachers in the state, which is wonderful. And we want to do more of those things, but it did cost money. And we can't pretend that all of the solutions are free because they're not. And it was a lot of money, but it was worth doing. I mean, it was worth doing because we have we're going to have more than 30, almost 40 more special education teachers in our intermediate school districts who were supported with salary and benefits and, mentorship and tuition and educational reimbursements. And that's the kind of support we need to provide for educators all over, because those are the things that tell them that we value their presence in the classroom. And so I really want to appreciate the partnership with the intermediate districts and their work there, because I see that continue going. And thank you, Madam Chair, for having this hearing where we could talk about these issues and hope to see some really good bills. And anytime we talk about educator licensure, for both the chairs, we should have this chart in front of us. That's what we were talking about, was the tiered chart, so that as we were hearing suggestions, we could see in front of us what you were talking about. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great suggestion, Senator, to print that off. It was very helpful. I want to thank all of the testifiers today remotely and who made their way in. Again, I think that it's absolutely critical that we don't just hear from agencies and commissioners, that we hear directly from the boots on the grounds in our education system. And I greatly appreciate you sharing directly what you think will impact the teacher shortage here in Minnesota. And we were taking notes on bills that we liked, and I even conferred with my co-chair here. He said, everyone's coming with solutions. This is amazing. They're not just, stating the problem. They're actually telling us how to fix it. And, I heard great ideas regarding short-term provisional licenses, dealing with prior teaching experience being incorporated, tackling unpaid student teaching, the reposting of tier ones being eliminated, out-of-field permission reform, red tape tier licensure reform, looking at federal programs and definitely tackling some of the biggest issues that teachers are talking about. These are all things that my staff and hopefully my colleagues on, regardless of what side of the aisle they're on, will begin tackling shortly. And I can't thank you enough for being the ones giving us the ideas here today. That's my favorite part, when that stuff starts to happen. So thank you very much for all of our testifiers. Up next, we have a bill actually on the agenda. Senator Rasmusson, if you can make your way up front. And hello to your lovely wife too. So great to see you again. Okay, welcome to the committee, Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator.
Madam Chair, I can move the bill if you want.
Okay, and do I have to have somebody move it?
Thanks for coming out.
Okay. All right.
Madam Chair, do you want the bill moved, or do you want to
Go
wait for
ahead.
that? So I'll move the bill. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Senator Rasmusson, if you want to talk about your bill, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate the opportunity to be in front of the Education Policy Committee today. So as this committee probably remembers, a short call substitute teacher pilot program was proposed in a number of different bills in the previous biennium by both Democrat and Republican authors. And in the Omnibus Education Bill in 2023, there was a 2-year pilot program that was passed where a short call sub could teach for up to 20 consecutive days in the same classroom with different requirements. Under current law, this pilot program is going to end this year. And so the bill before the committee simply makes this program available to public schools for an additional 2 school years. And I've heard positive feedback about this program from school districts across the state. There's some issues that hopefully an amendment here will address today. But I think when we're talking about the teacher shortage and why this pilot program is necessary, when I talk to the school districts that I represent, they struggle to fill teaching slots, and substitute teachers is one of those slots that they have difficulty filling. And so this pilot allows some flexibility for individuals to fill those needed substitute teacher spots, which can also help alleviate pressure on the full-time classroom teachers when they need to find subs whenever they need to be out of the classroom. So as the pilot program requirements are the same as they were before. It will require a joint application between the individual and the public school. So the school must agree that they want that individual to be a part of the pilot program. There's school training for the applicant, a criminal background check, and then a minimum requirement of an associate's degree or a high school diploma, GED, or equivalency, and at least 1 year of work experience as a school support professional or a paraprofessional in the district. And I think, Madam Chair, that's in the school districts that I've talked to, that's been one of the benefits of this, is that they've been able to have paraprofessionals that are, that they know, be able to fill in as a short call substitute teacher, provides that opportunity for both the district, the students, and the educators. So with that, I have a number of folks who would like to testify, and then happy to take any questions, amendments, or anything like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rasmusson. I believe you have 2 remote testifiers, if I'm reading that correct. So we'll begin with who you have here in person. Please state your name for the record and who you're with, and begin your testimony.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Kristen Damer. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Business and Administrative Services for Moorhead Area Public Schools. And I'm speaking today in support of Senate File 482. And I thank you to the co-chairs and the committee for hearing my testimony today. I want to tell you a little bit about the community which I work. Moorhead is a rural district that sits on the border of Minnesota and North Dakota, and is considered to be a part of a 3-city metro: Fargo, West Fargo, and Moorhead. However, we are surrounded by multiple smaller communities as well. While Moorhead has a population of around 45,000 people, our metro area has a population of 200,000 people, and we serve in those 3 large districts around 30,000 students. In our community, people live and work in Minnesota and North Dakota, transitioning back between both communities across the river. Moorhead's current student population is around 7,300, although we are considered a rural district. We employ approximately 1,300 permanent employees, and 46% of those are teachers. We currently use a third-party service to employ our substitutes. That's new to us within the last year and a half. We made that change in 2023-24 in order to receive support with the recruitment of substitutes, which has become increasingly difficult. Although we have maintained generally the same number of substitutes, we have not seen a significant increase in available subs, and we have actually had more difficulty filling long-term substitutes in general. I think I would also like to just note, hearing the testimony today, I think this bill is in alignment with a lot of what we heard, and I would say there is recognition of every testifier at the front end of today's meeting, committee meeting, that resonates with Moorhead. Moorhead is not unlike other districts, both rural and metro. We've seen significant sub shortages over the last few years. In Fargo-Moorhead, this has been exacerbated due to region's low unemployment, good economic development, and significant increases in enrollment amongst all 3 large districts. Increased teachers affecting the pool of individuals who have typically been employed by substitutes. We have also seen a general decrease in applicants for teaching positions in alignment with fewer students entering the teaching profession. Current changes to employee leave, while beneficial for employees, did not come with additional support for school districts to also support our students through substitute classroom positions. And while very important, we are continuing to see some increase, and the lack of subs go hand in hand. This pilot could be in support to provide substitute coverage for our employees who need to take that time for both health and wellness needs for themselves and their loved ones. To speak specifically to our data, our average fill rate for substitute teachers for 24-25 is around 60 to 65% of open positions on average per day. Some specific examples of our lowest fill rates each month are as follows. In September, on the highest day in September, we had 85 substitute needs for teachers. We had 64% of those filled. That meant 18 classrooms went unfilled. In October, 104 absences on one day. 51.72% of those absences were filled. That meant 29 classrooms went unfilled. In November, 94, 28 classrooms went unfilled with a fill rate just over 50%. In December, 103, 55.93% fill rate, 26 classrooms. And our highest number of absences actually occurred yesterday with 132 absences, 57.89% fill rate, and 32 classrooms went unfilled. What happens when we do not have enough substitutes? Students don't receive services. This could include special education, English language instruction, or support services in reading and math for those needing additional help. It can mean splitting of classes. So you might have a 6-section classroom and you take one classroom and split them among the other 5 classrooms. Doubling of classrooms, one teacher takes 2 classes regardless of grade or subject. Large group supervision, either in a gym or a theater with 1 to 2 supervising adults and multiple classrooms. And teachers miss contractual preparation periods, lunch times, and administrators are in the classroom subbing rather than being available to help students, staff, and parents or guardians. Our current substitute rates are competitive with our region, and even with some of the metro school districts at a rate of $150 per day, we also have a long-term sub rate of $251 a day if you are a retired teacher or you're working 30+ days in a singular classroom. We also have the opportunity for bonuses for working consecutive days, as well as payment if you pick up a prep time during your substitute day. And while substitute teachers' wages vary greatly across the state, this can be dependent on the size and location of the district, the total need, what the local competition is between those rates, and budgetary considerations. Moorhead did not participate in the pilot program because it was cost prohibitive to provide the $200 fee to all daily substitutes, and it felt unethical to do it just with those substitutes and not across the board with all of our substitutes. So allowing the districts to utilize the pilot within existing compensation structure or within a lesser compensation structure dependent on area would make it a reasonable minimum in line with regions, may allow for beneficial and allow for districts the flexibility to participate in the pilot and hire much needed substitutes. I want to note that the unique challenge that Moorhead has is being on the border of North Dakota. North Dakota allows substitutes to work without a bachelor's degree, requiring an official transcript documenting a minimum of 48 hours of college coursework, a successful background check, and an online application for substitute license. So that creates a competition concern, especially in a very economically sound area with very few employees. There has been a partnership also with North Dakota and the licensure agency to provide these substitutes additional support and training, which would be helpful and reasonable if to occur in Minnesota. But it's noted that the inequity creates further complication to an already important and urgent shortage of subs for Moorhead and our regional area, which also includes Dilworth, Barnesville, and Rothsay, to name a couple. This bill would be beneficial to all districts, teachers, and students. However, for Moorhead as a border city with our vastly different requirements than our neighboring state, it's imperative for us to be able to fill our classrooms and support our teachers and our students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Up next online, we have Rick Sandstead. If you could please unmute your microphone, state your name and who you're with for the record, and begin your testimony.
Great. Thank you, Senator Rasmusson, Chair Coleman, Chair Swedzinski, and committee members. Rick Sandstead, Superintendent of Schools, Alexandria. I appreciate Kristen, my colleague from Moorhead. She gave you some quantitative data. I'm here to share a little bit about what it's like on the daily grind for our principals, really, and our secretaries and our teachers. Nearly every morning, our principals and secretaries dread the hour before the start of the school day as they look to fill staffing gaps and holes due to the illness or absence that may be uncovered. Kristen mentioned some of the ways we solve those problems: combining classrooms, having teachers cover during their prep time, or occasionally principals and principals will sub for teachers who are absent. They've even allowed me to sub in 8th grade once this year. As you might imagine, that cycle puts great stress on our staff. And you just heard great testimony around teacher shortage. We also believe this is also connected to teacher retention. And we don't have a problem doing hard things and being creative and solving problems, but to do that every morning does become exhausting. So I'm here to advocate for extension of the short call substitute pilot program, but would ask for the removal of the $200 a day requirement that currently exists. I think Kristen mentioned the differences in region across the state based on financial obligations of the district. We also know that being the home of Alexandria Community and Technical College, we have a number of qualified people who have an AA degree in our community, as well as paraprofessionals who demonstrated great skill. We do already conduct training with our substitute teachers, and we would love to add to that pool. The extension of Senate File 482, along with the removal of the $200 minimum, would provide greater flexibility to our staffing challenges, and this would be true from Rochester to the North Shore, from Eagan to Eden Prairie. Thanks for your time.
Saved by the bell. Up next, remotely, we have Lee Westrom. If you could please unmute your microphone, state your name and who you're with for the record, and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Chairs Coleman and Swedinski, and the Ed Policy Committee, along with Senator Rasmusson, for sponsoring this extension of the short call substitute teacher pilot program. My name is Lee Westrom, and I'm the superintendent for Wadena Deer Creek Schools. And we're a school district of about a little over 1,000 students with 225 staff members and 87 licensed teachers. I'll just say right off from the beginning that I support the extension of this program, even though Wadena Deer Creek Schools did not participate in the program over the past 2 years. It is a struggle for all of us, as my colleagues from Alexandria and Moorhead have already mentioned. One of the biggest stresses that occurs is that our teachers end up filling most of our substitute positions on a daily basis. And we have a core group of subs that come in, but it's our teachers that fill in all the blanks, and they lose their prep period. And that prep period is important to them to prepare for the classes that they teach. And so that is an issue for us, and we welcome anything that can give us some relief as far as filling substitute positions. The issue, and it was mentioned by Rick, was that we didn't participate because of the $200 minimum payment for the subs. We pay $150 today here at Wadena Deer Creek for subs. We have a lot of smaller schools right around Wadena. Some pay as little as $135 a day, and up to about $175. For us specifically, if we were part of this program and the $200 requirement stayed the same, we would see a 20% increase to our sub costs, because, like Rick mentioned, we would feel the need to pay everybody at that same level, and that would add about $28,000 to our expenditures. And that's problematic for us because we're just coming off of $1.3 million worth of budget cuts last year, and we may be looking at more this year, and that's a situation that many of our school districts across the state find themselves in. So I advocate strongly for extending this program, but I ask that the $200 minimum payment be removed and allow us to allow school boards to set the pay for the substitute teachers. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Last, I believe we have Caitlin Snyder, if you'd like to come to the table.
Hi, Madam Chair and Mr. Chair. My name is Caitlin Snyder. I represent Education Minnesota and 84,000 active, retired, and future teachers across the state. That works out to be about 1,200 members in each of your school districts. Education Minnesota has opposed all sub changes that have come before this body except this pilot. I testified against this bill when it was a Senator Sparks bill. I testified against this bill when it was a Senator Dornick bill. The only reason we haven't opposed this pilot is because it is the only substitute change that recognizes the cause of the teacher shortage, and that's pay. Teacher licensure is a little complicated. There were so many great testifiers earlier today, but there were a couple of misinformation pieces that I'd like to correct. Music teachers do not need a BA. Art teachers do not need a BA. When we talk about the paperwork delay to getting teachers into our classroom, that's about the length of time it takes for the Bureau of Criminal Affairs to do a background check that is required for our teachers. The OFP limit has not been started, and that will not affect teachers until 2031. When we're talking about our short call subs, these are subs that are in front of our students for 20 days. They're in front of our students with no training in the science of reading, no training in math, science, cultural competency, no knowledge of what a 504 plan is or how it's different from an IEP, no knowledge in differentiated learning. Okay, so the kids watch Bill Nye for a couple of days. What's the big deal? This is not limited to just 4 weeks. In practice, many short call subs monitor a classroom for 4 weeks, maybe take a day off or take over a different classroom, and then come back into the same classroom. Nothing in statute prevents this or even requires this to be reported to parents. The Pioneer Press had a story recently about parents subbing in classrooms, one of those heartwarming stories that illustrates how our system is failing our kids. And it included someone on a short call sub saying they were covering a colleague for an extended medical leave, which is an inappropriate use of this license. Short call subs are excluded from the definition of public employees under the Public Employee Labor Relations Act 17903, subdivision 14. This means that people participating in this pilot, even if their usual job is as a para, represented by AFSCME or SEIU or Education Minnesota, are operating outside the unit without a contract and without due process protections contained therein. After last year's election, we surveyed almost 9,000 of our members, and the #1 priority for all members is raising educator pay. 25 states in the nation have directly invested in educator pay, including our neighboring states, where Iowa and South Dakota now have a minimum teacher salary of $45,000 and $50,000 respectively. I urge this committee to keep this in mind as they consider reducing educator pay for some by 25%. I'd like to end with a quote from a school board member on the range during negotiations for paraprofessional pay this past cycle. When our local was pushing to increase ESP wages, the school board member said, "Why do they need to be paid more? Aren't they just wives of railroad workers?" Educators are professionals. Care work is real work. It should be compensated appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Senator Swedzinski, you had a question?
Are we done with testifiers?
I believe so, unless there's anybody in the room that didn't get on the list earlier. Looks like we're finished.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Boy, my head is spinning right now. I do have one question, though. You went to a private, because for me, the overriding question is, why are teachers calling in sick? I mean, why are these numbers just skyrocketing? And that you gave the data that 50% of the classrooms are not filled. I forget the word you used, but not filled in, and that's just tragic. And putting Bill Nye in for 2 is just not an acceptable solution. Putting a bunch of kids in a gymnasium for a free day, that's not what taxpayers want. That's not what parents want. That's not what kids want. So it's discouraging for me as one of the few licensed teachers in this room right now to hear that we've got this teacher shortage and a sub shortage, but it's real, and I get that as well. But my question for you is, why did you go to an outside agency, and what are the pros and cons? I don't know if I've ever heard that before, that a school district's done that. I didn't even know that was a thing school districts could do. So if you could just, I know there's going to be other testifiers that have questions, but I'm just curious, what are the pros and cons of a district hiring out an independent firm instead of just doing that job within the school district? Because if you're still missing out 50% sub rates, I don't see that as being a real successful solution. But nonetheless, it's an interesting idea. So I'd like to just hear a little bit more about that. And I just want to echo what other members up here have said today. It's been a very edifying day today. And I told Mr. Cook that I appreciate all the testifiers that brought ideas today and not just brought, thank you.
Ms. Damer.
We use teachers on call. And actually, if you look at a lot of the metro area schools, a lot of metro area schools also use teacher on call. They used to be Kelly Education Services. So we employed them to employ our substitutes instead of employing them ourselves. Partially because they're a staffing agency, and our hope was that they could recruit more teachers to help support in our sub concerns. And of course, we can't have short call subs who have bachelor's degrees and not teaching degrees. So that we hope they could recruit more teachers for us. Mm-hmm.
Any follow-up, Senator? Senator Housechild.
Thanks, Madam Chair and members, and thanks, Senator Rasmusson, for bringing the bill, and as well as the testifiers. I grew up in Fargo-Moorhead, so very familiar with your area. Have swam in that pool there in Moorhead Public Schools several times in high school. I think the testimony today made it very clear, and I've heard from member districts in my district, given the rural nature that I'm in. We heard from the testifiers today, the Minnesota Rural Education Association, that this pilot program is really great. It's really, really important that we have this opportunity for us to fill these teaching spots. However, as we've heard in the testimony today and what I've heard on the ground is that the rate that is in the bill is unworkable for a lot of school districts, as you've described. And so what I'd like to do is introduce the A1 amendment, which would bring the rate down to 150 for non-metro and 175 for metro school districts. I think this is a reasonable compromise to make sure that all of our school districts, especially in rural and greater Minnesota, are actually able to use this program. If they're not able to use the program, then we're going to have these gaps in our education system. We're not going to be able to teach our kids when necessary, when there is that gap. And so my hope is that this actually lets us use this program effectively, particularly in the more isolated and rural areas like Senator Rasmussen and I's districts. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Housechild. And I view the A1 amendment as a friendly amendment. And one of the concerns that I've heard from my local school districts is that basically the $200 per day floor sets it above what they offer to substitutes through their program. And so to just underscore Senator Housechild's comments, I asked some of the local districts in the area that I represent what their current per day rate is for substitute teachers. And I won't list off the districts, but I'll just list some of the numbers. $150, $160, $140, $120, $135. And so at that $200 level, it has made it so this program is less attractive. And so even though a lot of the school administrators would frankly just like to have no requirement, I think Senator Housechild's amendment is a really good compromise where we're still having a floor for school districts across the state, but it's closer to what these school districts are actually paying substitute teachers today, so that this pilot program can have more usage. And whether it's at Moorhead Public Schools or other school districts across the state that are facing substitute teacher shortages, it will help them use this program more effectively. So I thank Senator Housechild for working on this amendment and for bringing it for your consideration today.
Members, the A1 amendment should be in your packets. I had a list of people who wanted to speak. I'll clarify, is there anyone that wants to speak directly to the amendment first? So you're to the bill, Senator Abler, and you three are to the amendment. Okay, we'll start with Senator Mann.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. I thought what you just said, Senator Rasmusson, was very interesting, is that this amendment brings it more in line of what we're currently paying substitute teachers, and we have this substitute teacher shortage. So to me, it's like, why are we going to do more of the same thing that's not working? I don't understand how lowering the pay for teachers solves any problems. $200 a day for a teacher with a family is practically poverty wages. And now we are going to send the message that that's too much money. So we want teachers to be indentured servants to our schools. Yes, we have a substitute teacher shortage. And again, paying them less is just going to worsen the problem. It will incentivize the school districts to continue to hire short call subs instead of hiring certified teachers. And I completely understand the reason for the program, and I support the program, but I don't support it when we are going to put it on the backs of teachers in this manner. It's going to, what one of our testifiers said, it's going to compromise the integrity of our educators, and it's going to compromise the education of our children. And I feel like I have to say this idea of make teachers go to work is a very common theme that we hear, not just in this committee, but in every committee. We want to remove teachers from paid leave programs. We want to remove teachers from earned sick and safe time. And historically, it's super easy to target teachers for two reasons. One, because we're disproportionately talking about women. And historically, it's easy to talk about women and women's income because who cares? And also because we can hide behind our kids, right? Well, what about, it's for the kids. What about our kids? And yes, our kids absolutely deserve the best. And that means that when a teacher has a communicable disease, they should stay home so that my kid doesn't come home with influenza the next day. And that means that a teacher should be able to stay home and take care of him or herself so that they can then turn around and take the best care of my kid. And so, again, I understand that districts are in a tough spot, but decreasing the pool of substitute teachers will make things worse for the districts. And so I cannot, for the life of me, understand why we want to decrease teacher pay. So I would recommend a no vote on the amendment.
Senator Kunish.
Thank you. And I do have, I agree 100% with what Senator Mann just said. I did some numbers. In Minnesota, the cost of living and the expenses associated with teaching, a daily rate of $200 is absolutely more aligned with the financial realities faced by educators. I can tell you 30 years ago, I was a substitute teacher at the local little Catholic school, and they paid me $100 a day. They'd write me a check out every day I would come in and substitute. I looked this up, and $100 in 1996 equals $204.91 today. So that $200 daily rate is really spot on if you want to look at inflation. The cost of living in Minnesota is estimated that a single person in the Twin Cities metro area needs to earn $47,442 a year just to afford their basic needs. Now, if a substitute teacher worked every single day of a school year, 165 days, at that $200 rate, that's only going to bring them to $33,000. So what you're doing, again, is reducing the ability for a substitute teacher or somebody that would like to help out schools in that way. You're diminishing the quality of the work or the appreciation of the work that they're doing. And I just don't understand, much like Senator Mann said, I understand schools are in a big pinch, but this is not really the way to do it. And I do have a question for the testifier up there for a second. That's okay.
Absolutely.
So can you tell me how much do you pay a daily wage, or how much are you charged when you go through that contractor for a substitute teacher? How much comes out of the school account?
Ms. Damer to the question.
It's approximately a 30% upcharge, but I think it's important to note that they employ that staff, so they also pay employee taxes and all the costs of being employees, so it's probably 15%.
Senator Kunish.
15% of what?
15% of the daily sub wage, so.
So what is that in a daily sub, after all the things that they cover for it, what is that daily charge that you are charged?
150, well, it depends because we have multiple levels of subs. So if it's a daily sub at $150 per day, it would be a 15% increase on the 150. However, if they picked up a stipend or it's a total bill, so you would look at it as a monthly, how much did we have? And they also do our paraprofessionals, so they look at the monthly bill of our substitutes based on who worked when. And it could be long-term substitutes, it could be half-day substitutes, it could be a daily substitute. And so they charge a certain percentage to do that work for us.
So, like, what would the lowest daily cost to a district be, and what would the highest cost to a daily cost be for a school district?
It would depend on how many subs we had out that day, or how many
Well,
subs.
just, you know, just like based on your experience, if you receive a bill for the day for 5 different subs, what would the lowest one be and what would the highest be that you
Well,
would have
it'd be $150 with a 30% increase. So.
Okay. So add $45 to 150, and what have you got? $195. So you're paying that probably in most instances, one way or the other. Why wouldn't you put that money towards a substitute teacher individual rather than a contracting company? And I realize they're the ones that hire these people and they do all that work. I really do get all that. But I think it just goes to show that when you have to balance all of this out, that you're actually getting a deal at $200. And I think about, you know, when I was teaching and we would have classrooms where no substitute teacher would come in for the day, and you'd have a classroom with no teacher in there. What do? Sometimes the assistant principal would jump in. Sometimes a different support person would jump in. And when you think of their hourly wage, it's costing more than that $200. Sometimes principals jump in and take that class. They have, you know, $200 for a day. You know, what does that come down to at an hourly rate? You know that principal is probably earning tens and tens of more dollars, you know, times that amount of money. And, or perhaps they take that class and they split them in half, and half goes to one teacher's classroom and the other half. That teacher that takes that extra, they are getting an additional day's pay to have those children, to host those children in their classrooms. So at the end of the day, $200 is a deal. It actually is a deal. And when we have it at $200 now, and then you're saying, okay, we're gonna drop it to 125 or 150. I mean, how demoralizing. How many of us have ever had our salary reduced? And does it give us that incentive to substitute teach? If that was me and I said, whoa, last year I was earning $200 in that district, this year I get 125, forget it. You know, it just does not send a good message to those folks that fill in, and it's not an easy job to be a sub.
Senator Kunish, there's other members that'd like to speak, and we're coming to the end of our time.
But before we go, I as the Chair of Education Finance, I'd like to request that this be sent to the Education Finance Committee. I think the dollars and the cents that we are talking about and the financial ramifications, I think my committee would also love to hear it. So if that would, if you'd be in agreement, I would like to have it sent to Education Finance after this.
I think we have a motion for that coming up. So,
Thank you.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. And you know, maybe districts would find that rate a little more affordable if they didn't have a couple years worth of unfunded mandates that have driven them $1 million into deficit. I think that's some of the challenge that they're dealing with. Senator Housechild, I appreciate you bringing this amendment forward. Clearly, it's not easy to do. You're pushing back a little bit, and I appreciate it. Senator Rasmusson, it's a good bill. What we saw here today earlier were a bunch of teachers, principals, and folks in the classroom propose a bunch of solutions, and the organization that represents 84,000 teachers didn't have anything to say about it. And now we have a bill that is a proven solution that people like and want more of, and they came here and testified against it. And while they were up here, testified against some of the other solutions that were proposed earlier. If that's not a sign of some of the dysfunction here in Minnesota as it relates to education, I don't know what is. This is something that, first of all, nobody up here on this committee is disrespecting teachers. At least I haven't heard it yet today or so far yet this year. And I also don't appreciate short call substitutes being disrespected. We appreciate what they do in classrooms every day on behalf of our kids. I don't think they're just going in and playing movies for kids. And to make that generalization so cavalierly is quite frankly disrespectful. They're serving a very significant need. So I'll be brief. There's more I could say. But I appreciate the amendment. I'm going to vote for it and for the bill. But quite frankly, I wish your amendment would give even more flexibility to districts. They know better than anybody up here how to best serve their teachers, their students, their schools, and their communities. We just heard from them that they need that flexibility. We've got people that aren't participating in this program because it's not flexible enough for them. So let's do what we've all keep promising to do, which is to pass actual solutions that they're asking for. This is one of them, and I appreciate it coming forward. Thank you.
Senator McQuaid to the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to request a roll call on the amendment. I want us to be really clear because we're not coming, and Senator Rasmusson, I have no problem with the bill, the original bill as it was introduced here. I think extending the pilot program is good. I think it always behooves us to actually come back and hear how it's going so that we know when we need to extend something or make something permanent. But I want to be really clear because this is already in law. And so if we change the rate of pay now, it literally is a pay reduction. It's not like a hypothetical pay reduction for short call subs. It's like a literal pay reduction for short call subs for 2 years as the cost of living increases. And so like the price of eggs is in bananas. So I'm really, really uncomfortable with having heard all of the people who came in today to talk about a teacher shortage, and pay was mentioned a lot of times, and then to come back with a, extension of a pilot and then literally reduces pay. It's like not hypothetical. It's like a short-term sub today is going to earn less money when they, when this program is extended. So I'm a no on the amendment, and I just want us to be really mindful of, like, the best way to show respect to short call subs is to make sure we don't take away their pay. So I'm going to be a no on the amendment, and I recommend folks vote no too.
Thank you very much. Senator Hauschildt, thank you for bringing forth the amendment. I agree with Senator Duckworth. I'll be voting for it. I almost wish it went further because school districts are going to see the economy and inflation go up and down. They're going to see demand for these positions go up and down. They're going to see their budgets go up and down, and I wish that we gave them even more flexibility. Sometimes it feels like we're control freaks on this committee and just gave them the flexibility to meet market demands on their own. So I appreciate the intent behind it. I'm going to get to Senator Rasmusson if you have any comments before we go to a vote on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the robust discussion on this. I just want to be clear of what this amendment actually does. So I have a list here of the districts and what they currently pay substitute teachers in the area I represent. The average is $150 per day. And so under the traditional short call substitute teaching license, teachers in my district are getting paid $150 a day. But because for the short call pilot program for individuals who have qualifications that are lower than what would be required for our traditional license, sets it at $200, the school districts don't participate. So no one is getting their compensation cut. What it does provide is it provides paraprofessionals, constituents of mine, the opportunity to go and become a short call sub. And I think the amendment that Senator Hauschildt has brought, it's based off of data looking at the averages in both rural areas and metro areas. And again, it actually, the amendment sets a floor, which we don't do for our other substitute teaching licenses. And so it guarantees a minimum, and it actually ensures that this program is usable, it's viable, it creates more opportunities for more people to get in the classroom. And so I just wanted to provide that clarification as to why this amendment is so important.
Incredibly briefly, Senator Wiesenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was going to say what Senator Duckworth said, so thank you for echoing that. I did want to just mention the what's it called to use for subbing? Teachers on call. And it's not new, and it's been around. And I think it's more efficient because you can say, I need 14 subs. You give it to them and they find it, rather than paying someone on staff to call, and then you might not get someone to come in. So I believe schools are going to do something that's efficient to try to get people in to teach your kids. So thank you.
All right. The assistant will take the roll on Senator Hauschildt's A1 amendment.
Co-Chair Coleman.
Aye. Aye.
Co-Chair Coleman, aye. Co-Chair Coleman Swazinski.
No.
Co-Chair Swazinski, no. Vice Chair Duckworth.
Aye.
Duckworth, aye. Vice Chair McQuaid.
No.
No. Senator Abler.
Yes.
Senator Abler, aye. Senator Bolden.
No.
Senator Bolden, no. Senator Eichhorn.
Aye.
Senator Eichhorn, aye. Senator Hoschild.
Aye.
Senator Hoschild, aye. Senator Kunish.
No.
Senator Kunish, no. Senator Mann.
No.
Senator Mann, no. Senator Miller. Yes. Senator Miller, yes. Senator Wiesenberg.
Aye.
Senator Wiesenberg, aye.
There being 7 ayes and 5 noes, the amendment is adopted. Are there any final comments to the bill before we move it to finance? Senator Abler.
When I know there's no time, just to announce, I was going to ask Ms. Snyder to come up and ask her to offer us what they propose to do. I don't think anybody is, and it's too late for that now, so we've got to figure out a way to help our students get people in the classroom that aren't janitors, and with all respect to janitors, you know. And as we face just unprecedented lack of success in our students, for whatever reason, and I'm not going to put any partisan blame on anything, and I've been endorsed half the time by the teachers, so I'm friendly to that group. And I think everybody here who doesn't get endorsed by them is friendly, and everybody who's endorsed is friendly as well. And we somehow have to figure out a way to help the kids, the students, succeed as truly our future. And so hopefully with this new shared thing, I think this is a good example of how we're going to have to move forward, divided votes one way or the other, and make a difference in what's happening. And so I'll leave it at that. Thank you. And so just sometime I'll ask her that question. Anyway, thank you. Oh, and Madam Chair, I'd like to move that this bill is amended to be recommended to pass and go to the Education and Finance Committee.
Any other comments, members? Senator Rasmusson, any final comments? Great. Senator Abler moves that the bill as amended is recommended to pass and referred to Education Finance. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The bill as amended is recommended to pass and referred to Education Finance. All right, thank you all. That is all for our agenda today. The committee is now adjourned.